Well, what are the feelings of this young man at the moment? He's yet to reach double figures in the Test innings against the West Indies. A double failure at Wellington. He's got 4 runs so far today. Immense pressure on him to give a batting performance at this level.
Yes, I would think pressure from the public, but also more pressure from his own personality. He's a man that's very strong-willed and very determined to succeed, and his efforts so far against the West Indies will not have come up to his own personal high standards. So today he's got the chance to show everybody conditions reasonably in his favour. Good batting strip.
It's nicely leg glanced for a single. Rutherford 5 and New Zealand go to 14.
And of course he's batting with a New Zealand batting hero from the first test, John Wright, and I'm sure they've both discussed at length the sort of approach they should take to these quick bowlers. And I'm sure Ken Rutherford is learning a lot from batting with John Wright. John Wright, the epitome of concentration, determination in the first test. And I'm sure he'll be looking to repeat those efforts here at Eden Park to give New Zealand a good start.
And Wright getting really squared up with that one. It wasn't a particularly pretty shot that John Wright played in the end. He was able to keep it out.
Well, John Wright getting squared up here. You see he went forward, then decided not to, and wraps him on the front pad, squeezes out under the offside, but John Wright really didn't know much about that delivery at all.
It's a marvellous picture we have of John Wright from our close-up lens as he talks to himself as the ball is being bowled. A study of intense concentration, and then during the overs he's able to just chew in his gum a little and relax ever so slightly. 14 without loss at the end of the 5th over, and Malcolm Marshall has no wicket for 5 off 3, and it has started to rain again. Courtney Walsh has gone to the top of his run to prepare for the next over. Moderate westerly winds with isolated showers forecast this morning. Otherwise fine and mild. We're having an isolated shower at the moment.
I think one would have to regard him as rather unlucky, as striking the West Indies so often early in his career, and I'm sure many other players would have experienced similar sort of records had they had that misfortune. But he's battling away, had a reasonable sort of first-class season. Some debate about whether he would open or not. He did down the order for Otago.
So another no ball from Malcolm Marshall, signalled by umpire George Morris. Problem which has affected the West Indies for so many years. Problem which you would expect for a team with many fast bowlers, but nevertheless not quite as accentuated as it has been, as we saw in the Wellington Test match. Really numerous no balls. Didn't quite get hold of it. Perhaps a little bit of top edge, but enough of it that it reaches the boundary. In position early and put it away well, and there's plenty of empty spaces out there, so there's no real danger for him.
Malcolm Marshall firing this one in short. Just spooned it away really, top edge, but it flew very safely and fairly square, so 4 runs to John Wright.
And those 4 runs there bring up Wright's 1,000 runs for the New Zealand season. That's a rare accomplishment for any batsman.
Well, that was a good ball by Malcolm Marshall, angling across John Wright and moving away off the wicket. And just missing the of Wright's bat. Very good delivery. He had to play it.
And that was another good one. Perhaps he may just have pulled the bat inside of it. As we saw in Wellington, he is a very good judge of the ball to leave alone.
He's just struggling a wee bit at the moment, John Wright, with the line of these bowlers. Of course, they angle across him. He's well used to that. But he'll be trying to settle down.
Good work in there by Gus Logie. We've had two very good short leg fielders in the test so far. Rutherford in that position is very, very sharp for New Zealand. And Gus Logie, who has taken up the position only since Desmond Haynes secured his finger injury in Australia, has shown very quick reflexes and sharp hands there as well. Took 3 catches in Wellington in that position.
Another sketchy start to the day here in Auckland with these showers. It really has been frustrating. Hasn't helped the cricketers at all. And it looks like we may get the odd shower for the rest of the day.
So the end of the over for Marshall. He won't be entirely satisfied so far with his bowling. His line hasn't been consistent.
We're talking about Ken Rutherford. We'll have a look at his test career record to date. And there it is, age 21, still a young man, 10 matches. Not a very happy time with that average, but as we've said, he's had the misfortune of facing the might of the West Indian opening attack on more occasions than probably he would wish. But he'd have happy memories of Eden Park last year. Picked up 50 not out against Australia as New Zealand beat Australia in that particular test.
That was a well-directed bounce over the middle stump. Felt a little sorry for Ken Rutherford in the West Indies in '85. Then at the age of 19 to make your debut against that type of attack that West Indies possessed at the time. Bowled very fast, and he had real problems, not the least of which was being run out without facing a ball in his very first test match. And I suppose there's only one way to go after that, and that's up.
She has fought back very well, Ken Rutherford. It must have been a shattering psychological experience. But it's not good for the average when you have that sort of start. It's a long struggle to drag it up. The end of the over. Courtney Walsh. We've now got Malcolm Marshall from the scoreboard end to resume. Working up a wee bit more pace with that delivery, Malcolm Marshall. Well played by Ken Rutherford. picking the line and letting it go. Often with these very quick bowlers, the batsman's so conscious of getting in behind, he can tend to make rather involuntary moves towards the ball and thereby get an edge.
Well, the ball has moved around for Malcolm Marshall and for Courtney Walsh, but mainly when it's been offline. And Marshall's line hasn't been yet consistent, which is unusual for him. Usually they're probing all the time. Conditions which are not dissimilar to those on both the first and the second day when it was overcast. Dampness in the air. And neatly played off the legs. Just a single. Burnage, in fact, being placed back there after the shot in the previous over, which went into the outfield. Up go the umbrellas now, and it looks as if we could have another break in play. The weather looks to be a little bit more ominous than it was on the previous occasion. With the score 26 without loss, start which has not been without its event, but nevertheless 26 on the board, and they've seen through the first 8.5 overs, and that's more than can be said for the New Zealand opening partnerships in the last 5 test matches against the West Indies. 4 in the West Indies and once in Wellington. Haynes around from long legs. So 2 more runs then to Rutherford. And carries him into double figures for the first time in a test match against the West Indies. Does look a lot more comfortable than I've seen him before. But that's not surprising because I've never seen him before get double figures. That's the end of the over. It's 28 without loss. And it's good afternoon to our first guest for the day, Colin Snedden, former New Zealand Test player and Radio New Zealand cricket commentator.
Good afternoon, everybody. This weather, I think, is driving everybody crazy. I arrived at the ground yesterday and turned tail and went home, I'll be quite honest, because of the way the weather was. It's infuriating because the ground conditions are excellent here. The pitch, I think, is still a comfortable one to bat on. The fact that New Zealand's surviving to 28 for naught.
Yes, there was a lot of debate, as you would have heard, Colin, at Wellington about Jeremy Coney. He didn't look happy there.
No, I would agree. His tremendous value has been as the anchor man in the middle of the innings for New Zealand. I think it's always unfortunate if somebody's required to bat in a position in what they're not really comfortable, and I have the sneaking feeling that Coney perhaps bowed to a little bit of pressure in batting there. I don't think it would have been his personal preference.
Malcolm Marshall generating considerable pace, but he's very much wide of the mark on that occasion. Jeff Crow had a good match in Wellington, 37 in the first innings and 27 not out in the second. But very much in the firing line here, batting at number 3.
Yes, of course, it's difficult now for Jeff Crow because he's the man that's asked to do the job. He's been up and down the order a wee bit. Jeff Crow will be very anxious to try and establish himself in the New Zealand batting lineup. He's been around it a fair bit, but hasn't managed to secure a spot and has tended to be used up and down the order. He's even opened on a couple of occasions.
That's another wild one from Marshall, and it's going to beat Dujon and down to the fence for 4 more byes. One can hardly blame Dujon.
Shows the pace of Marshall's delivery, because the fine leg man, well, he isn't very wide, and he only had to go about 9 or 10 paces to his right, but wasn't able to get across to it.
Once again, extras doing a marvellous job. 12 of them already. Top scorer in this innings.
Malcolm Marshall, regarded as probably the fastest bowler in the world at the moment. Not a big man, but very fast approach to the wicket. Been a little bit wild at times this morning, but of course he's got the wicket of John Wright.
End of the over from Malcolm Marshall. Successful one for the West Indies. It's 34 for 1 with John Wright, the batsman, out. Caught by Richardson off Marshall for 11. 34 for 1.
Yes, they'll be hoping for a pretty good day on the one-dayer, I imagine, Colin.
That'll be a sellout, no doubt about that.
Malcolm Marshall is really working up considerable pace here. Richard Hadley said on the first day that it was a very difficult wicket to bowl on for pace bowlers. But I think Malcolm Marshall is, with that extra bit of speed, Colin, is finding something there.
Well, he really comes in at top speed. He moves. His approach, I think, is the quickest of any fast bowler I've seen, and he never breaks the momentum of it at all at any stage, and really gets that arm high and whips it into the pitch.
Loud appeal for LBW, but looked to be heading down leg side. Looked a bit of a try on, really.
Yes, this ball, notice the angle of the ball. It certainly struck him in front of the wickets, but I don't think there's much doubt that it would have missed leg stump. Also, the height factor may have come into play there, but umpire George Morris was not interested.
Oh, that one's ripped past Ken Rutherford. Really, it's just straight out speed here from Malcolm Marshall.
A bit late on that, Ken Rutherford. He seemed to lose the line of it, but certainly did move away a little. But Ken Rutherford struggling on that occasion.
Difficult times here for Ken Rutherford, having to weather the storm. Well, Colin, thanks very much for joining us up here in the broadcasting box this morning. Good luck for the future. Let's hope the bowls continue to go well for you.
Thank you. Goodbye, guys.
36 for 1 then, New Zealand, in reply to the West Indies 418 for 9 declared.
Malcolm Marshall, spearhead of the West Indian attack. Bowling from the scoreboard end, but look at his approach. Very fast, as Colin Stebbin was saying. Doesn't let up at all. keeps watching the ball, and a good follow through.
Well fielded by Logie. The ball coming very quickly from the bat of Ken Rutherford, as one would expect. Pace bowler the speed of Malcolm Marshall, and that's the end of the over. 36 for 1 in reply to 418 for 9 declared.
Yes, I played as a younger man. I noticed the emphasis on younger.
Down towards fine leg. And it came from the pad. My word, the ball travels off the pad very quickly.
Yes, well, again, of course, the pace of these West Indian bowlers, and the New Zealanders have got a lot of extra padding in there.
Rodney, I know you spent a lot of time in Christchurch. Are you travelling down for the third test?
No, I think not. More's the pity. I'm not sort of earning that sort of money to be able to afford me to go down there. But I shall be watching on the television.
I thought broadcasters made a fortune, Rodney. Is that not right?
Well, what do you class yourself as now, John?
No ball called, and Jeff Crow has his first run now as he clips it away down backward of square.
Well, I'm not quite sure about the answer to that, Rodney, so I won't bother.
Another observation, when I was a kid, I remember about 8 years old seeing a West Indian test side take my county team Essex to the cleaners for about 700 or 800 or 900 runs. And the bowlers that we feared most then were all spinners. Now it's changed.
Oh, bowled him. Ken Rutherford clean bowled by Malcolm Marshall, and New Zealand loses its second wicket.
Well, Malcolm Marshall strikes again for the West Indies. Ken Rutherford, the victim, clean bowled, ripped the stumps out of the ground. It was a foolish delivery, right arm over, pushed forward, went between bat and pad, and that off stump ripped out of the ground. So New Zealand, the second wicket gone. Just seemed to lose this one a little bit. The bat didn't come through straight, and there was a gap there. Trying to force it in front of the wicket, see if we can get a good shot from side on. That back foot moving back a little, then coming forward. But it slipped through, plenty of pace. And that brings Martin Crowe, the hero in Wellington, with that brilliant century down there, coming out on Eden Park. New Zealand 38 for 2.
Well, for what it's worth, New Zealand aren't quite in the same position as the West Indies were on the first day at 14 for 2. But, of course, the wicket has settled down a lot, and at 38 for 2, a big partnership is now required between the brothers Crowe, Jeff, who's on 1, and Martin, who's just arrived.
It's not a great time to come in with only a few minutes to lunch. New Zealand would have been very anxious to get those two through to lunch, but it's not to be. Rutherford's out, and there's one of the signs supporting Martin Crowe, the local hero, and of course New Zealand hero in the batting department at the moment. He'll be facing the bowling of Malcolm Marshall. Very attacking field. Ali, 2 men in close forward of the wicket. One on the offside, one on the on.
Malcolm Marshall then has both wickets for the West Indies. And without his old sparring partners, Joel Garner and Michael Holding, he really has done an extremely good job.
positive defensive shot from Martin Crowe, had it well covered. Got well forward. That's an indication that he sees the ball so early. Sign of a great batsman, of course. Does pick the ball up early, which is essential, particularly when you're playing against players of the pace of Malcolm Marshall.
Another good-looking defensive stroke from Martin Crowe. The end of the over from Malcolm Marshall. And it looks like there will be time for another over before lunch.